Things are very strange in the world now, and they happen at a rapid pace. I want to go back to the storm and the idea of Rahm Emanuel that you don't ever want to waste a good emergency. If that's what the thinking is in Washington, then you need to know your rights. I want to show you a tape that I played for you at CNN when I believe we were the only national news broadcast to show it. Then we played it on Fox, and more people were amazed that they had never seen it. But this is what happens when people's rights are trampled in an emergency, and they fear for their lives, and they want to protect their home. Somebody takes advantage of that situation. This is actual tape of what happened at Katrina, during Katrina, when the police decided to confiscate guns. Watch.
No one will be able to be armed. We will take all weapons.
It was a human drama with emotions and tensions running high. Patty Connie is still trying to recover physically and emotionally.
They really did a number on me.
From the day police forced her from her home.
It was traumatic. All of a sudden, they were banging on the front door, the side door, and the back door. And they said, "Let us in."
Patty tried to explain. She was on dry land, she had plenty of food and water, and didn't want to abandon her dogs. But it didn't matter.
If you see 6 or 8 police that look like linebackers pushing you in a corner, you're in shock. I'm saying, look at all my food. I got plenty of food. They kept pushing me back, and ended up like this.
Then, Patty showed them a small revolver she was carefully holding in the palm of her hand. A camera crew was there to capture what unfolded next.
I said, "It's not even loaded." And I dropped it on the floor.
You got a gun?
Well, they punched me in the face. Look at my black and blue marks. Look at what they did to me. They dragged me out of here. I really thought they were going to kill me. I really did.
It was an amazing time in American history on what happened that nobody knows of during Katrina. We wanted to get Cam Edwards. He's the host of Cam and Company. He does a radio show for the NRA and NRA News. And Cam is here, and we appreciate Cam. Thank you for staying in Washington, D.C. I know the hurricane is coming, and you're evacuating or getting out of the area as soon as you can, as soon as you finish this interview. But I appreciate your time with us today.
No, absolutely, Glenn. You're right. It's important that gun owners know what their rights are when the storm's bearing down.
When Katrina hit, President Bush later signed an order. It was called the Disaster Recovery Personal Protection Act of 2006, I think. Most people don't know that they can take your gun, or they did what they did in Katrina, but then they don't know that you do have rights to stop it. Tell me what the Personal Protection Act is.
What that bill did, and it was introduced by then Congressman Bobby Jindal, working with the NRA, it basically says to law enforcement across the country that you cannot violate the rights of American gun owners, even in a state of emergency. You can't violate federal law, you can't violate state law just because a state of emergency exists. And if that happens, then the punishment for those law enforcement agencies is a loss of federal funding. That's what Congress could do. It could say, if you violate the rights of Americans, we're going to cut the purse strings.
Okay.
Now, so that's one part of the step, Glenn. But what we saw locally in Katrina was the mayor and was the police chief in New Orleans saying, you're not going to be armed. And so the state of Louisiana passed personal protection acts as well. Or emergency powers legislation that specifically forbids law enforcement agencies from engaging in that type of activity. And we've seen the NRA work across the country to do this at the state level as well.
Okay, but if I'm sitting there and I'm this poor old woman who we just watched, and I've got 6 police officers at my door, and they come in, what am I going to say? I mean, what do I say to them?
Yeah. Well, I think what you say to them in that situation, if you feel like your rights are being violated, and it's you and it's those 6 police officers, you cooperate, you get the names, you get all the information that you can, you hire an attorney, and you have that attorney contact the NRA Civil Rights Defense Fund, because that's what happened after Katrina washed ashore back in 2005. The NRA went to court almost immediately and got an emergency injunction preventing the city of New Orleans from going forward with those gun seizures, and then they took the city to court to get the guns back.
But most people, have they gotten their guns back from Katrina?
Sadly, no. The city of New Orleans has done, I think, a lot to impede that progress. They've not let gun owners know where their guns are. They've really not put out a great deal of effort to reunite gun owners with their firearms. And the last time I talked with the attorneys that were working with the NRA on the case, there were barrels of firearms that were rusting away down there in the New Orleans Police Department.
I mean, and this is what Bobby Jindal is the governor. I mean, what chance do you have when Bobby Jindal is not your governor?
Well, you're exactly right. And this is one of the, look, this is one of the problems here. We had a city in Katrina that decided that the law-abiding gun owners should be defenseless. And they said that, the private security folks, if you could afford somebody to guard your mansion in the Garden District, great.
Right.
But if you were living out there in Algiers and it was you and your 12 gauge or you and your handgun, you had to give that up. We had neighborhoods, we had business owners in New Orleans who were actually defending themselves, acting in self-defense, and they were disarmed too. And you're right, at the time, I don't know what the easy answer is, but after the fact, I do know that there are steps that can be taken to right the wrongs.
All right, if I'm forced to evacuate my home, do I leave my guns or do I take my guns with me? And if I leave my guns, can they come in and take them?
That's a really good question. I think it depends on where you're going. If you know where you're going and you know that you're going to be allowed to have your firearms with you, I would say by all means take them. If, on the other hand, you're heading to an emergency shelter, or maybe you're going and you're going to be boarding a bus or some sort of evacuation mode of transportation, you may not be able to have your firearms with you. You may have to temporarily surrender them. I would say if that's the case, again, make sure that you've got the serial number for your firearms. Make sure that you get a receipt for any firearms that you have to turn over, and make sure that you know what agency has taken them.
Can they come?
Now, if you're staying, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, if I'm leaving but I'm leaving my guns at home, can they come in and take them?
Generally, I would say no. The one aspect that makes me say generally, I remember a story in the wildfires of Arizona earlier this year where I believe firefighters and sheriff's officers did go into a home where there was guns and ammunition because they were worried about the ammunition cooking off.
Okay.
But I would say, I'm not an attorney, but I would say generally speaking, no, they're not going to be able to come in and take your firearms.
I'm not an attorney, but I know the Constitution. No is the answer. Cam, thank you very much. I appreciate it. And best of luck to everybody in Washington, D.C. Best to you and your family.
Thank you so much, Glenn.
God bless. Back in a minute.